Hi. Hi, Nebsy. Always dying for attention, aren't you? Are you dying for attention? Oh, Nebsy. Hey guys, Constance here from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. Welcome back to A Good Life Farm. Since we at last have a blessedly rainy day, I thought I would take a minute to sit here on the porch and talk to you about something that has been requested several times by a number of people, is information all about comfrey. Many of you have commented on how I have several comfrey plants that grow here on our farm and wanted more information about the plants, you know, what I use them for, how I propagate them, and all of that good stuff. And so this video will be kind of a Comfrey 101 informational video. I'm not going to go into all of the details about comfrey. There's a lot of information that I honestly don't know, so I will share what I do know, and I will share my experience with how I personally use it, as well as how to propagate it. It's quite easy, and it's a great plant to have on your farm, homestead, garden, and I will explain to you why. But first, a sip of coffee. Okay, so first of all, what is comfrey? Comfrey is a plant. It is a perennial. It's a very hardy plant. Now, I don't know all of the regions that it grows. You might want to do a little bit of checking as far as your particular environment. Here we are in 7B. In northern Alabama, and it grows beautifully here. So as I said, it is a perennial plant. It's a little bit of a bushy plant, and there's different varieties of comfrey. Now, there are some types of comfrey that you can grow by seed. I actually bought some one year, but then I never planted it because I discovered that these true comfrey seeds can actually become quite invasive, and comfrey has the ability to just completely take over the entire area where you plant it. And so instead of planting those seeds, I did a little bit of looking and found a variety, one of two varieties that I know of that are actually considered sterile plants, and so you can grow them and they'll grow where you plant them, but they're not going to go everywhere and become a problem. And when it comes to comfrey, they're referred to as bockings, B-O-C-K-I-N-G, and then it's followed by a number. Alright, and my battery died, so let's try this again. So, comfrey comes in a number of different varieties. As I mentioned, they are referred to as bocking followed by a number. And I'm aware of two versions that are considered sterile that will not become invasive and spread by seed. The one that I have is referred to as bocking 14, and it is a Russian type of comfrey. I think the other sterile one is 4. I'm not positive. That would be something you would need to look up. So why would you grow comfrey? For the most part, there's generally 3 different purposes for growing comfrey. In the past, a lot of farmers have used it as fodder for their animals. It's a very nutritious plant. It has a lot of nutrients, and for a very good reason. Comfrey, when it grows, it gets a taproot on the plant, and if you've ever pulled up, say, the thistles that we have that grow in our pasture, you know that a taproot is that big long root that you leave even a little piece of and that weed is going to come right back. Well, with comfrey, that taproot serves a very important purpose. That taproot can reach way down deep into the subsoil, much further than any of your garden plants around it can do, which means it can get access to the water, the nutrients, and all those things that are deep down in there that your plants can't get. And so when it draws all that up through that taproot, it pulls it up into the plant, and now your comfrey plant, the leaves are filled with all of these nutrients. And some of the nutrients that can be found in comfrey include nitrogen, iron, calcium, manganese, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, as well as several vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin B12, and a bunch of trace minerals. And so the fact that there is so much nutrition in the leaves of these comfrey plants is why people grow it for many of the purposes that they do, including the fodder for livestock. Now there's a little bit of controversy about growing it as fodder for your livestock. I know my ducks devoured it when they got their very first taste of it, and I actually had to fence off the area around those comfrey plants so that it could grow back because the ducks loved it. But there are some studies that say it can cause toxicity in like the liver of goats, but then there's other studies that say no, that's not accurate. So the controversy is out there, and I think that's something that people just need to do their own homework on. The second reason is for medicinal purposes. Now comfrey is known as knit bone, and just like it sounds, it is used as like a compress and put on areas of the body where there's a broken bone, and it's said to help the bone to heal faster. So it's used for a number of different health reasons. I personally, while I do use a lot of herbs for health, I use oils and things like that, comfrey is not something that I have a lot of experience with. Well, actually, I don't have any experience with it because it's not something that I have personally used. So if that is something that you are interested in, I would recommend getting a great book about herbs. There's a number of excellent books out there. I have several in my kit listing, kit.com/Cosmopolitan Cornbread. It is an organized list of a lot of the things that I use, books, homestead things, garden things, kitchen stuff, and that is linked down below in most of my videos in the show notes. Again, comfrey is used as fodder, comfrey is used for medicinal purposes, but primarily the reason that I grow it here at A Good Life Farm is for its garden purposes. Now that taproot reaching down deep into the earth, sometimes as far as 8 feet, holy cow, I mean, we're talking a 3-foot or so tall plant with an 8-foot taproot. That's pretty impressive. But because it has that taproot and is able to pull all those nutrients up into the leaves, and because it is such a hardy plant, you know, my ducks devoured my comfrey plants that I had out there underneath my pear trees. I fenced them off. They're growing right back. Because they grow so quickly, it is very beneficial because you can use it a lot in your garden. You can use it over and over again all season long. You can completely chop down that comfrey plant as much as 7, 8, even 9 times every year, depending upon where you live. It is a perennial, so as long as you leave that root in the ground, your plant is going to come back in the springtime, and you can use this year after year after year. So, how do I use it in the garden? Well, generally there's 2 ways you're going to use it in the garden. First of all, because of those nutritious leaves and all of those minerals and vitamins and all that stuff that are in those leaves, you can actually use it as a green mulch. You can break off all the leaves, you can bury it in the soil next to your plants. Last year I actually chopped down several of my comfrey plants and I just laid the leaves in between the rows of my corn, because corn needs a lot of nitrogen, and so the nitrogen in those comfrey leaves broke down and leached into the soil around my corn plants, and it helped them. And so that is one way, is just simply using the leaves and letting it break down into the soil. The other way is to create comfrey tea, and not comfrey tea that you drink, but comfrey tea for your garden. It is an excellent natural fertilizer, and you can use it as a foliage spray, you can use it as a drench. and it's really easy to make. So to make the comfrey tea, it's really pretty straightforward, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You are essentially going to brew the leaves. So you want to start with a container, good sized container, something like a 5-gallon bucket, and you're going to harvest the plant. And you don't have to be delicate about this. You can twist off the plant, you can take a little sickle or knife or gardening shears or something and just chop the plant down, take it, the leaves, the stems, all of it, shove it down in this bucket, and you want to pack it down in there and fill your bucket about halfway, and then set something like a brick on top of the plant so that the leaves and everything stays down in there, because then what you're going to do is you're going to fill that bucket up with water, and you want the plant to be under the water so that all of the nutrients that are in that plant can leach into the water and create this nutritional liquid gold for your garden. And you want to let that sit for about 3 weeks, 20 days or so. Once it has done its thing and you've got this nice rich liquid, the leaves and the stems, all of the expelled plant matter that is down in there, you can just pull that out and put it straight into your garden like a compost, or throw it in the compost pile if you want to, but honestly I would just put it straight into your garden, lay it around your plants, let it do its thing. Then to use the tea, and you want to dilute it 50-50, so half tea, half water, and go to it. If you are using it as a food for your plants, stick it in a watering can, water your plants. If you're using it as a foliage spray, of course you want to strain it before you put it in a sprayer. Just use like some cheesecloth or something like that. You don't want any pieces of leaves or anything like that clogging up your sprayer. But then you can, again, 50-50, half tea, half water, and use it as a foliage spray for your plants. Once you have comfrey established on your property, in your flower bed, next to your garden beds, wherever you have it, you've essentially got a free source of excellent fertilizer. And it is renewable because it will grow over and over and over again. And I highly recommend having it in your garden. So how do you establish it? How do you plant it? Well, here's the deal. The variety I have, like I mentioned earlier, is a sterile version. It is not going to propagate by itself. And so a couple of years ago, I ordered some root cuttings from a place called Marsh Creek Farmstead, and it's the Bocking 14 variety. It's the sterile variety. They grew excellent. I just got these little root cuttings, I stuck them in some soil, and in no time I had little baby comfrey plants growing like crazy, and I planted them all over the place. I have them planted in areas that are mostly shaded. Out here in front of my house, the front porch area faces kind of northwest. So most of the day this area is in the shade, but then in the late afternoon we have direct sun that comes over here. I've got comfrey plant right here in front of the house in the flower bed. I have comfrey planted out there around several of my fruit trees. I have comfrey out in the full sun out there by my aronia berries. I have baby comfrey plants that I've established right in my garden area. So it doesn't really matter where you plant it. Like I said, it's a really hardy plant. Now the comfrey plant does get these beautiful little delicate purple flowers, but that's all they are. The butterflies love them, the hummingbirds love them, but there's no seeds that develop. Now earlier this year I had a flower bed that I removed, and I built a raised bed, and we just kind of reconfigured the area out here. And so in the process of doing that, I had a couple of comfrey plants that needed to move. So I just went out there with my shovel and I dug deep and I pulled them out, and then I had these clumps of comfrey plant, and what I did was I simply broke those clumps into pieces, planted them around my pear trees, and I had brand new clusters of comfrey plant growing until the ducks got a hold of them and devoured them, but they're all coming back. And so that is one way that you can propagate it, is by breaking apart clumps of plants just like you would irises or lilies or anything like that that you need to thin out. The other way is through the roots. Now, when I moved those plants, I actually broke off a piece of one of those tap roots that was about 10 inches long or so, and I didn't want it to go to waste, so what I did was I simply snapped that root into several pieces, stuck them in a little planter box with some soil, and in just maybe 2 weeks or so, I had little baby comfrey plants coming up, and those are the ones that I have stuck out there in the garden area to establish some new permanent fertilizer sources right there in the garden. And so they're really, really easy to propagate through just little pieces of root. It's a great thing to have on the homestead for a number of reasons, and you really can't beat free fertilizer. So that's it, you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me on a very rainy afternoon. The garden and the ducks are definitely loving it. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all next time.